and Jess for breakfast. We are joined by Radio 97's resident lawyer, Despina Priala of Priala Legal. Now, we wanted to talk about the Australian consumer law. There's some changes coming up that could affect your rights as a consumer.
That's exactly right. So the Australian consumer law has been around a very long time. It used to be known under the old Trade Practices Act, which was established in 1974. It's a Commonwealth Act, so it affects everyone in Australia. And then it changed to the Australian consumer law a few years ago. So the Australian consumer law basically is legislation to protect consumers when they go and purchase goods and services. And the way that that is done is that the legislation has implied warranties within the legislation to protect consumers when they buy goods and when they buy services. So, for example, goods that will be of merchantable quality, goods that will be fit for purpose and not defective, and that's what we're talking about generally here for consumers. So currently there is a threshold for consumers under this legislation if they want to actually take a business to task and make a claim under the Australian consumer law, and that threshold is $40,000. And that threshold, interestingly enough, was set in 1986. So we are now in 2020.
That was a long time ago. Yep.
Yes, and we have finally seen an increase from 40,000 now going to be 100,000 as of the 1st of July next year.
Makes sense with inflation.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's really the underlying reasons for it. You've got inflation, the cost of living, CPI, all of that, and it's been in place a very long time, since 1986. So I think it's quite well overdue that the increase has come about.
The 80s called.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's it. So is the amount, is that the main difference, the difference between what you could claim previously, 40 grand, and now 100 grand? So it's the amount that's the main change here?
It's the amount. But what happens as a result of changing that, as you can imagine, is that the definition of who is a consumer is then going to change, because currently, up until 1st of July next year, you make a claim only for goods or services valued at 40,000. So that's only going to capture a certain percentage of certain consumers. So now it's going to expand the definition of consumers because it goes up to 100,000. So people who purchase goods or services up to that value, so that will naturally increase the definition of consumer by the sheer fact of the changes with the threshold.
Much larger pool.
Yes, exactly right, because the value of the assets are increasing, and therefore the people who are buying those assets are being expanded. You know, instead of spending 40,000, they might be spending 60,000 or 80,000 on a particular goods or service, and now that will be captured as of next year up to $100,000.
Yeah, so it does open up the number and the amount of different products and services that fall under this new these changes.
That's exactly right. So no changes yet. They will only come into force as of the 1st of July next year. It is an Australian consumer law, so I'll make that point again, that it's not a state-by-state law, so it does actually affect everybody in every state and territory of Australia. So that's important for listeners to know, because I'm not sure whether between now and the 1st of July there might be a lot of hoo-ha about it and a lot of press about it. They might not want to perhaps, you know, shine a light on these new laws, or maybe they will. Sometimes laws get passed and they sort of just get passed without people really being aware of them. So, and that's why this show is really good, because we get to see the laws that are about to be passed, and this is one of them. So we've been notified, we've seen bills being passed, we know it's going to come into force 1st of July next year, that's what they tell us now. So then we can pass on that knowledge early on to listeners.
You think sometimes they'd like to keep this hush-hush because you as a customer benefits more so than business or service.
Exactly.
Next week we want to touch on two powers of attorney when it comes to companies, because there's such a broader range that we can speak of. We only spoke about the individual this morning, so perhaps we could go there when you're in next Thursday.
I would love to do that, because that's a completely different situation.
And we can also find you on a YouTube channel now. We can check out your vid.
Yes, you can. Yes, all these videos are now on YouTube under my name, Despina Priala. So in case the listeners come in at the end, listening to the show, you can actually see the whole show now on YouTube, if you wish.
Which is great, so you can watch it any time of the day or night on YouTube.
Exactly.
Yep. And once again, if you have a question that you would like Despina to answer, it could be anything to do with the law, big or small, By all means, drop us a line, breakfast@radio97.com.au. Put in a few details there, and we'll be happy to ask your question on your behalf.
We also have access to you up in Runaway Bay.
Yes, in Cockleshell Court, Runaway Bay. Office line is 55291 294.
Priala Legal to the website prialalegal.com.au.
Yes, absolutely. They can jump on there and send a query if they like via email. Not a problem.
Yes, Despina at prialalegal.com.au.
Yes, that's right.
Always access to you. I see what you do with your clients. We welcome you back next week. Thank you so much for your time, Despina.
Thank you.
All right.